Hello, everyone. Thanks for this test. And someone asked me a question. Hello, everyone. Thanks for this test. And someone asked me a question. So what's going on with Michael Fasusi? So I would say right now that Michael Fasusi is probably going to sign with OU. Mom didn't go on the visits to Texas or Texas A&M, and I think that's a big part of the connections OU has. There doesn't appear to be any chatter that Bill Bedenbaugh is leaving OU, going to go anywhere else. So I would anticipate Michael Fasusi signing with OU. He may wait a day or two. There's been some conversation about that, but I would anticipate OU keeping the gem of the class, 5-star offensive tackle from Louisville, Michael Fasusi. Did everyone get that? All right. So does the video look okay for everybody? Okay. So Jimmy Satterfield, and he flips on signing day for OU. Caleb Burns just posted on social media that he is going to stick with Baylor, so that eliminates that option. I'm not sure it's a flip. Well, there is the quarterback OU just offered from Utah, Jet Nui, I believe is how you say his name. So thanks for the note on the lights. Let me dim them a little bit. Is that too dark? Okay. So OU does have Jet Nui from Utah, who they just offered. He's committed to Oklahoma State. And Blair, what's his name? Arguello, the West Coast guy for 247, who's usually very reliable about Utah, Arizona, that area of the country recruiting. He's predicting that he's going to flip to OU, so OU should get a quarterback. Jet, I've watched his footage on Huddle. He looks pretty good. So he looks pretty good. Quick release, throws all over the field, decisive. I would say if you can appear decisive in the Huddle video, he looks decisive. Mobile, throws on the run well, is able to scramble for yards as well. And apparently, Arbuckle's been wanting to flip this guy, but just wasn't able to flip him to Washington State because there were a number of quarterbacks that have been mentioned for OU. A couple of guys been thrown around. And obviously, the Arbuckle wanted this guy. So it will be interesting to see if that commitment happens tomorrow. But I think the odds are pretty good that Arbuckle's going to flip him. So I don't think any other flips are really on the table. I think the major drama tomorrow with Caleb Burns having decided to stick with Baylor revolves around what Cortez Mills isn't going to do or will do. Is he going to choose Nebraska or is he going to stick with Oklahoma? Nebraska obviously fired their offensive coordinator. Their wide receiver coach when they promoted needed some when they promoted Holgo, they let loose their wide receiver coach, and apparently that might have thrown off their ability to flip stills. So, anybody got any other questions? Okay, and then video and audio, other than the light issue, and Chuck, my friend Chuck, asking that I have a little more decoration to the back. We'll work on that down the road. Wide receiver commits. So obviously, I don't think Manny Choice is, and there's any doubt Manny Choice is going to sign with OU, and obviously Elijah Thomas will sign with OU. And then the only question is Cortez Mills. And it certainly looks like all the reports that OU separated from the Harrises appear to be accurate from that perspective. JUCO, I don't think OU's gotten really good. There's nobody JUCO that they brought in. So I'm going to be interested to see. So if they stay, they add Jet Nui, they'll be at 19 commits for the class. So I'd anticipated this class being, 23, 24, even counting, adding some portal guys later. So I'd like to see OU do some things now there's no JUCO defensive tackles. They were following this guy, Tavian Atkinson, for a while. But an offer never went out and it never went anywhere. Yeah, I'll talk about this more on the live stream tomorrow. Just give you guys who jumped on this a quick preview. I'm really surprised that we're at one defensive tackle and one defensive end in the class. I just don't think Shield Knight. I don't see how that's going to work as an every down defensive end in the SEC. So we'll see. But 19's low. I would like to think that OU will use the rest of December and January to add some additional high school players. We desperately need more linebacker depth, in my opinion, because as I said on my other podcasts and on some of the other live chats I've done, I feel like Marcus James has a high potential to move to defensive end, just getting bigger. So, so the question is, does OU go for somebody like Gabriel Dindy Brownlow? Do you kick the tires there with 3 seasons to play? I think you could. I think what I see with the portal strategy-wise is that OU can reach defensively for maybe some high-profile guys who, under Todd Bates, could sort of fix their course, get a course correction on their career, like Dindy Brownlow. But on the offensive side of the ball, I don't think we have the luxury to try any of those things. So I would see offensive portal players, which I think primarily is offensive tackle, quarterback, obviously. We'll see what happens with Mateer. And wide receiver. And again, that depends greatly on what happens with the injured 4 and Dion Burks. But I don't think you can risk it on wide receivers that have not been super productive previously. Like Malachi Coleman, I wouldn't touch that. Everyone's going crazy for Mekhi Hudson. Hasn't been that productive. If you're thinking, you want more productivity, not more potential, then I would be looking for guys more like Trey Harris, I believe he was from Louisiana Tech before he ended up at Ole Miss. Those are the guys I would be looking for, folks who put up 1,000-yard seasons, 800, 900 yards. I don't think we need more talented, unproven production at the wide receiver spot. We need maybe two guys signed who have been highly productive at the level they've played. So Jeff asks if anyone's looking to declare early. I would say the biggest concern, Craig, do you mean we need 1,000 wide receivers to be able to field a team of wide receivers with all the injury problems, or 1,000-yard receivers? So Jeff, I think the major name to watch about leaving early is based upon the fact that he was able to pass rush so well against Will Campbell on Saturday. Maybe the only real highlight. The only real highlight was, I think R. Mason Thomas is your number one worry, that he somehow, an agent convinces him his draft grade isn't right. And he leaves and he ends up falling to the 3rd and 4th round and ends up being a steal for folks down the down the road. But there's a lot of defensive ends. It's a good, very good defensive end draft. So I think that and maybe a little NIL bump could convince our Mason Thomas to not go pro. Obviously, Robert Spears Jennings. I just don't think the NFL draft safety's that high. I think he needs to come back for another season. None of the line, Stutzman, has all the linebacker. He's the linebacker coming out. Billy Bowman at safety. The portal. Technically, the portal officially starts in terms of folks being able to visit and make officially visit places starts on the 9th. But obviously, guys are getting tampered with and making pre-deals. So we'll start seeing some of those decisions start to come out. Some of the guys who already entered the portal have already, made some visits and have made some declarations. But the real action will start on Monday. From that perspective. For example, there's a story that Noah Fafita, the Arizona quarterback, was entering the portal. Now his parents and are acting as his spokesperson are denying that. So we'll see if that happens. There was some belief that maybe Miami was tampering there. So I think there's a chance OU will lose someone to the portal via tampering on some level. Is that a wide receiver? I don't know. Is that we'll see. There's lots of potential. A name I think that OU could lose, and it's disappointing because he has so much potential, and it's been thrown around on various websites, would be Lewis Carter. That wouldn't shock me in terms of that. But yeah, I think if you're OU, you really want to get a left tackle, the best left tackle, or right tackle. I just want the best tackle to add to the tackle mix. I think we have enough players inside, both guys who played this year, recruits coming in. Tight end. Here's the thing about tight end. I've taken, I wouldn't say an exhaustive review of tight ends, but overall, tight ends in the portal, there's just not any real elite guys there. I have read the same. Jimmy Satterfield asks any rumors of Anderson hitting the portal. I've read the same thing you guys have. I've seen it. I don't know. I mean, I think obviously it would be understandable if the Andersons wanted to try somewhere else and get a fresh start somewhere else. But I think overall, the stories about Andrell Anthony, I'm not sure about that either. So, I think where Arbuckle will help will be if for some reason somebody comes out with a massive offer for Mateer that we can't really imagine, like, Ohio State, has some sort of $3 million NIL offer or something that OU just realistically can't match. I think where Arbuckle helps is he would help you get be able to identify, recruit, and bring in another portal quarterback. So on the Jackson Arnold thing, I think the NIL part of this was going to be interesting because obviously, I don't know what Jackson Arnold's NIL number is. Let's just say it's $500,000. I don't know that that's true, but I don't think you can bring him back at $500,000 after what we saw this year. And is he willing to take a pay cut to prove that he can be the starter? So I think that's going to be the interesting thing that happens there. Or maybe Arbuckle, maybe he meets with Arbuckle and says, I think this guy can get me on the right path. I'm going to compete all spring for the starting job. And then if something goes wrong, I can always hit the portal in spring and then find perhaps a location where a college is more desperate for quarterback help. But I do think overall the quarterback play in college football this year, I think, has dropped considerably. And I think the portal quarterback options are not what they have been the last sort of 2 years from that perspective. So I just meant this as a test. Does anybody have any other pressing recruiting or sort of team kind of questions they'd like to ask? Otherwise, I appreciate everybody doing this. It seems like this was working just fine. The we're gonna do a live stream tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Both Chris from Horns Down and Jason from Hall of Fame will be joining us, and we'll be doing kind of a roundtable discussion about what's going on. So, Jimmy Satterfield, do you think JF will stay or leave? I think he will leave. I think, to me, I think that a lot of people are sort of overreacting. I said this on the Horns Down podcast last night. I think people are overreacting to what Brent said, and I think you really are going to have. We're going to see Joe John Finley move on to do something different somewhere else. And I think we'll see a new tight end coach brought in to handle the tight end position. I've heard the same rumors as everybody else that it's Brian Lepak has been the name thrown around on multiple websites. I think that's a good option. I would be very happy if that happened. I think he probably can get the most out of the talent in the room and probably can help OU recruit down the road other options. I don't think you hire Brian Lepak and the next day or two and somehow steal Lincoln Cure. But I think he would develop the guys you have and get the most out of the talent on campus, and he would help you down the road. Don't overlook Ryder Mix in the 2026 class at tight end. He's had a really productive junior year and is a really good dual-purpose tight end. But I don't think Joe John Finley's. I mean, I think once you've called plays, and there's no sense that there's any co-OC or anything going on. It's Arbuckle's being given full control over the offense in terms of play calling and everything else. So I wouldn't imagine that that's an environment that Joe John Finley is going to want to stay in. But he may have a hard time finding a play calling opportunity somewhere else. I don't know what might happen. Jeff Lebby is obviously a much rumored location for him. But I think Joe John Finley will leave by the time February signing day, if we can even call it that any longer. I don't think Joe John Finley will be part of the OU coaching staff. I think the main question about time frame is, and it's not really been clear from anything I've seen, is I know Arbuckle is obviously out there recruiting. He's changed all of his social media, and he's recruiting for OU. So I guess the wild card is, can Arbuckle call our bowl game? Is that a chance for him to get in, start working with the quarterbacks during the practices and bowl practice? And can he call a bowl? Can he call the bowl game, or do you just leave that alone and leave your debut for next fall and not create anything for fans to be angry or annoyed about by calling the bowl game? And if that's the case, then Joe John Finley would stay through the bowl game. And I think OU's bowl opportunities all center around something like December 20th through December 27th. So I could see dead Joe John Finley calling the bowl game, coaching the bowl game, and then when the coaches convention lands, whenever that is, and during the playoffs or in between the playoffs, it's always a big coaching convention. It's a big job fair, basically. I see Joe John Finley picking up a job there and moving on. So he wouldn't be around for the February signing day. Okay, so one last call for any questions anyone has, either recruiting, either 2026, 2025, or staff, current team players. NFL early entries, I think it's R. Mason Thomas. And yes, I think he was the number one choice. And Jeff, I the reason why I think is because Brent knows he has 1 year to fix this, and I believe that he was all set to. I think that's the number one. He chose Arbuckle because when you combine Arbuckle with Bill Beanbaugh and Emmett Jones and maybe DeMarco Murray, those guys are all going to know exactly how this air raid works. The language, Arbuckle was the best choice to get better, faster. And that's what Brent needs. He doesn't have 2 years to restructure the offensive personnel, recruit different kinds of quarterbacks. He doesn't have 2 years. He doesn't have 2 years to sort of rebuild the whole nature of the offense. And I think Faulkner, and to a lesser degree Craddock, might have been less effective unless you had some of the personnel changes that they might want to have done. And I think Brent just can't afford that. So I think he's going with the guy who can give him the best results the fastest. And I think that was Arbuckle, and I think that was always the choice. I mentioned this in the Hornstown podcast. I did have a source tell me that Arbuckle absolutely nailed his interview, both the individual interviews with Joe C. and Brent. I believe they did individual interviews. That's what someone told me. But it was also a group interview, and Arbuckle was clearly had the best interview. He was the best interview. I think Faulkner was probably choice number 2, but I think there were little concerns about whether he might, if UGA's relationship with Mike Bobo as their offensive coordinator is a little tenuous. Their quarterback development process has been a mess. Their quarterback recruiting has been a mess. So if UGA doesn't win a title, I could see Mike Bobo. I could see Mike Bobo not having a job at Georgia, and I would think they would go. If you watch Kirby Smart talking about their offense in that game on Friday, it's obvious that Kirby's pretty enamored with that scheme. So I think, if you were OU, you would worry about, and Faulkner's a Georgia guy, played at Valdosta State, was a GA at Georgia. So there's a lot of connections there. And I think he's also, if you looked at that offense, he'd also probably is going to be high on some head coaching jobs as well. So I think that maybe hurt Faulkner's overall appeal, as well as, I'm just not sure that, if you had some bigger blocking tight ends and H-backs, and we're confident that those guys should all be on the field at the same time, I think Faulkner makes sense, but I think you might be a year or two away from having all the personnel to really make some of his scheme work. So in my mind, he chose the guy that could get OU make the most improvements in the quickest amount of time. And Brett needs a functioning, effective offense next year to complement what should be, again, a really good defense. So, all right. Well, thanks, everybody. I appreciate you all jumping in here and doing a live stream. We're going to do this again. I'll be posting this on Twitter. I'll be posting this on the Patreon. I'll be sending the link out. We're going to be doing this tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, and I'm going to have guest hosts, and we'll pull up video, look at video recruits, and give you our opinions of all the guys, and do a little bit of a roundtable discussion about signing day and where OU stands. So thanks, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and end this stream, and I appreciate everyone participating.